Freud didn't just invent psychoanalysis, he uncovered something far more dangerous, a secret map of female desire. Not the one described in textbooks, but the darkest, most forbidden version. His discovery was so disturbing that even his own followers tried to censor it. Today, you'll see what they tried to hide. Not theories, not poetic words, but the raw, unsettling truth about what truly governs women, where morality and logic lose all power. Imagine if I told you that Freud's most explosive, and above all, censored, writings contain the key to decoding female behavior at its deepest level. Behind a century of politically correct rhetoric lies a psychological map that explains everything, from hypergamy to emotional manipulation. And if understanding this hidden map grants you an almost unfair advantage in love, power, and life, then brace yourself. Because what you're about to witness is psychology at its purest form. Most men fail to understand women, not because they lack intelligence, but because they were fed lies, sold illusions disguised as truth. Be yourself. Treat her like a queen. Love conquers all. Meanwhile, divorces flood the courts. Loneliness spreads like an epidemic, and generations of men wander like ghosts through relationships they don't understand. What if the answers had always been within reach, buried in the writings of a man the world tried so hard to erase? Contrary to popular belief, Freud's most dangerous work was not about the Oedipus complex or the anal stage. It was a series of private lectures, later banned, on what he called the psychosexual dynamics of female choice. These were not lectures for the masses. They were whispered gatherings in the candlelit rooms of Vienna where Freud's words carried the weight of sin and revelation. Each sentence felt like opening a forbidden door in the human mind. Every idea challenged the moral fabric of society. He dissected the female subconscious with a precision that would terrify even modern psychologists. He wasn't describing behavior, he was dissecting instinct itself. The things that even women didn't want to see within themselves, Freud wrote them down, clinically, coldly, without mercy. But his notes were never meant for the public. They were hidden, buried, censored by his own followers. Because what he discovered did not serve progress, it served power. And power in the wrong hands, he warned, could rewrite human intimacy. Because what Freud discovered was not theory, it was pattern. He noticed that beneath every act of affection, beneath every smile, every silence, there was a hidden transaction of power. Desire, he realized, was a form of strategy, not emotion. One case stood out: the wolf woman of Vienna. A lady of the aristocracy, the very image of grace and moral purity. But behind closed doors, she toyed with her admirers like prey. She'd bless them with warmth one night, then vanish into silence for weeks. Her absence became a weapon, her unpredictability a spell. Freud traced the source back to her childhood. At 6 years old, she had watched her mother systematically dismantle her father's reputation. She learned early that power is not taken, it is given. And women, Freud realized, are taught from the beginning to earn control not through force, but through perception. To master softness as a weapon, emotion as a tool. He wrote, "What she denies becomes her weapon. What she withholds, her throne." That single line changed everything. It was the moment Freud stopped studying madness and started studying feminine strategy. He began to see attraction not as romance, but as a negotiation between dominance and surrender. He discovered that female desire was not a question of choosing between a good man or a bad man. It was a magnetic polarity, a constant tension between security and danger, comfort and chaos, admiration and conquest. A paradox that every woman carries but few admit. And this polarity, once triggered, turns even the calmest woman into the most unpredictable creature on earth. It wasn't morality she followed, it was the pulse of the story. Because deep down, every woman, Freud found, doesn't simply seek love. She seeks narrative tension. A man who makes her feel, not one who merely stays. That realization terrified the world, because it meant desire could be engineered. That love could be constructed like hypnosis. And Freud's private lectures were nothing less than the blueprint of control. A century later, modern research now confirms it. Studies in behavioral psychology reveal that emotional unpredictability activates the same reward circuits that govern obsession, addiction, and longing. In simple words, What Freud intuited through instinct, neuroscience now maps with scanners and blood flow. Freud saw it first. Love isn't blind, it's wired. In 2012, the University of Texas revealed a striking truth. Women are 52% more likely to interact with a man who displays controlled unpredictability. A small gesture, a delayed reply, an unexpected silence. All of it creates a surge of curiosity, then longing. Because predictability is comfort, but unpredictability is power. Another study, published in the Journal of Social Psychology, found that women perceive a man as more attractive if they believe that other women desire him, even if, objectively, he's less physically appealing. This isn't coincidence, it's evolutionary programming. What she sees others wanting, her brain labels as valuable. It's ancient instinct, the survival mechanism of selective desire. Women were never drawn to men for who they are, but for what their desirability communicates to others. Most men are playing checkers, while women are playing four-dimensional chess. Each move she makes, a message, a test, a calibration. She's not reacting emotionally, she's measuring patterns. But here's the good news. Once you've seen the chessboard, you can never pretend you haven't. Once you recognize the code, you stop being the pawn and start becoming the player. The question is, do you want to stay blind or do you want the map? Because Freud eventually confessed that there existed a second layer of female psychology, so opaque, so powerful that he hesitated to even write it down. He called it Das Schattenzyklus, the shadow cycle. An invisible mechanism, a hidden force guiding nearly every decision a woman makes without her even realizing it. It's not a conscious strategy, it's biological poetry. Desire and fear, reward and risk, woven into one instinctual pattern. He called it the shadow cycle, an unconscious program that governs attraction beyond logic, morality, or even a woman's own self-image. It operates silently, like gravity, always pulling her toward the one thing she shouldn't want. And here lies the disturbing revelation. What a woman says she wants and what she actually responds to are often polar opposites. She might describe the ideal man as kind, patient, understanding, yet fall in love with the one who makes her feel chaos, thrill, danger. Her conscious mind seeks comfort, her subconscious craves the storm. Men who learn to activate this circuit don't just seduce, they reprogram. They awaken the hidden architecture of her instinct, a switch buried beneath layers of logic and morality. When triggered, attraction becomes automatic. The most shocking example of this phenomenon came in 1901 with the story of the Countess and her lover. Freud received a visit from a noblewoman who had abandoned her wealthy husband, a man of status and comfort, to be with an uneducated commoner. It was a scandal among the elite. How could she abandon luxury, security, and privilege for a man beneath her social class? The truth was brutal. Her husband had become predictable. He idolized her, obeyed her every whim, and constantly sought her approval. He was gentle, perfect, and therefore invisible. But the lover, he ignored her. He would vanish for days. He didn't worship her, he confused her. His charm wasn't in beauty, but in his total indifference. And this indifference inflamed her. It awakened her shadow cycle, the subconscious addiction to emotional polarity. Freud noticed the same pattern repeating endlessly. Women despising submissive men, yet obsessing over those who challenged them. The ones who stayed calm in her storms, the ones who refused to bend. Why? Because the female subconscious does not crave offered love. It craves the conquest, the earning, not the receiving. When love becomes easy, the story dies. When she must fight for it, it becomes oxygen. Freud understood this centuries ago, and modern research now confirms it. Neuroscientists found that the female brain releases dopamine not in the presence of affection, but in the anticipation of it. Desire isn't satisfaction, it's suspense. And suspense, when controlled, is the purest form of power. A woman wants to earn a man's attention, not receive it freely. This is the paradox that fuels her desire. Because what she earns, she values. What she's given without effort, she quietly discards. Modern studies confirm this. In 2017, the Journal of Evolutionary Psychology revealed that women feel significantly more attraction toward men who show selective emotional unavailability. It's not coldness that attracts her, it's control. When your energy cannot be easily accessed, it signals something ancient in her subconscious: dominance through discipline. In simple terms, the less you seem to need her, the more she begins to need you. Because scarcity creates value, and what is rare is worshipped. But this truth carries a dark side. Freud identified what he called the testing mechanism. Unconsciously, women provoke, search for weakness, and create conflict, just to see whether a man breaks under pressure. These tests aren't cruelty, they're instinct. She needs to feel your emotional frame before she can trust your energy. Those who do lose all value in her eyes. Those who remain unmoved, however, trigger something primitive. That calm detachment, that masculine stillness, acts like gravity to her chaotic storms. Cleopatra understood this long before Freud. She seduced Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, not through submission, but through challenge, manipulation, and demands that they prove their dominance. Her allure wasn't beauty, it was control wrapped in chaos. It was this very tension that drove them mad for her. She gave them glimpses of paradise, then pulled them back into confusion. Each absence became desire, each return relief. That cycle, that rhythm, was the spell itself. The lesson is simple: chivalry no longer seduces. The good guys don't finish last. They never even start the game. Because she doesn't crave kindness, she craves polarity, and polarity demands distance. Freud believed he had reached the depths of human desire until he discovered a third level, a psychological trigger so potent it could create an addiction in a woman so deep she wouldn't even understand its origin. He called it the addiction protocol. And it wasn't crude manipulation, it was mastery over the instinctive mechanics of female desire, the very circuits in her brain that decide who she dreams about and who she forgets. One striking example: the singer and the poet. In 1905, Freud documented the case of a famous opera singer who abandoned her career, her wealth, even her family for a poor writer who treated her with calculated indifference. She was adored by thousands, yet enslaved by one. When asked why, she replied simply, "When he's with me, I feel alive. When he leaves, I feel empty." Freud's diagnosis: intermittent reinforcement. The writer didn't flood her with attention. He gave it in small, unpredictable doses. He mastered rhythm, and that unpredictability acted like a drug. Modern neuroscience confirms what Freud suspected. A 2014 Harvard study showed that the human brain responds more intensely to unpredictable rewards than to constant attention. This is why dopamine peaks not when you receive, but when you anticipate. It's the same principle that makes slot machines addictive and certain relationships impossible to escape. Because her mind starts chasing the next high, the next message, the next sign, the next appearance. You become the variable reward, and her emotion becomes the gamble. The secret lies in controlling the rhythm. Give too much, she tires and withdraws. Give just enough at the right moment, and she becomes obsessed. Her nervous system bonds not with affection, but with the roller coaster of tension and relief. But Freud didn't stop there. He went even deeper. He began to suspect that behind this emotional addiction was something greater, a transformation of identity itself. Because when desire turns into dependence, it's no longer love, it's reprogramming. Freud discovered that women don't just crave attention, they crave emotional contrast, the rise and fall, the fire and the silence. A rhythm of warmth and withdrawal that keeps her feeling alive. In a controversial experiment, he showed a group of women two profiles of men, one who was always affectionate and consistent, and another who fluctuated between warmth and coldness. The result? 73% of the women chose the unpredictable man, even knowing his behavior was unstable. Why? Because stability soothes, but tension electrifies. Predictability is peace, but peace kills passion. Good men offer steady affection. No highs, no lows, no emotion. But the man who shifts between presence and mystery, between warmth and distance, literally rewires her nervous system to crave him even more. This is not manipulation, it's biology. Her brain links uncertainty to significance. The more emotional variation you create, the more meaning her subconscious assigns to you. The great seducers of history understood this instinctively. Casanova would disappear for weeks, only to return with an unforgettable letter. Each absence built pressure. Each return exploded like release. His silence made his words powerful. His distance made his presence divine. Napoleon wrote to Josephine letters filled with both longing and anger, devotion and control. He made her feel everything: love, jealousy, desire, fear. And that emotional whiplash became her addiction. So how can you apply this today? Break the pattern of predictability. If you always respond to her messages immediately, slow down, let silence become part of your language. If you constantly suggest dates, space them out. Let curiosity replace routine. Let her wonder, let her miss your absence, create emotional contrasts. Be kind, but never complacent. Be committed, but never permanent. Show warmth, but let your mystery breathe. Make her lose your attention, because only then will she fight to reclaim it. The goal isn't to make her doubt your interest, but to make her desire your presence as something rare and exceptional. Because in every great seduction, there comes a moment when something changes, when her curiosity turns to need and her interest becomes compulsion. Freud described this in his mostly censored notebooks as psychosexual imprinting, a phenomenon where the bond becomes so deeply rooted that no logic, no advice, no distance can erase it. He realized that when emotion repeats with intensity, the body itself learns the pattern. It's no longer choice, it's reflex. She stops loving you as a person. She starts craving you as a state of consciousness. One of his most chilling cases involved a woman deeply attached to a man who openly mistreated her. She was given countless chances to leave. She refused every time. When Freud asked her why, she gave a haunting reply: "When I'm with him, I feel like myself." It wasn't Stockholm Syndrome, it was something far deeper, a biological anchor forged through emotion. And modern science now confirms what Freud once only intuited. Brain imaging reveals that love and fear activate the same neural pathways. So when she feels both, the attachment becomes unbreakable. That's the dark paradox of desire. It's not peace that bonds her, it's contrast. MRI scans now reveal what Freud only sensed a century ago, that passionate love activates the same brain regions as cocaine addiction, the same circuitry that fuels euphoria, obsession, and withdrawal. The same reward system that binds the addict to the drug, binds lovers to each other. And this state can be anchored through a series of intense emotional experiences that blend pleasure and pain. Freud realized that the human mind remembers not comfort, but contrast. It doesn't cling to peace, it clings to the storm that made it feel alive. The process begins with what psychologists call the justification of effort. When a person invests deep emotional energy in a relationship, especially through conflict, uncertainty, or pain, the brain rewrites the story. It convinces itself that the reward must be worth the struggle. Suffering becomes proof of love. The more chaos she endures, the deeper her attachment grows. A 2016 Yale study found that women who experience intense emotional turmoil early in a relationship form significantly stronger bonds than those who experience a perfect, linear romance. Because the mind confuses intensity with importance. It mistakes adrenaline for meaning. Freud also spoke of a point of no return, a critical period between 3 and 6 months of intense interaction, during which attraction crosses from psychological to physiological. If you manage to cross this threshold, her body associates your presence with a feeling of vivid aliveness. If you fail, no future attempt will ever leave the same mark. It's the moment where emotion becomes memory, where your absence begins to hurt more than your presence heals. The masters of seduction throughout history understood how to provoke this transformation. Casanova would oscillate between ecstasy and fear, guiding his lovers through midnight gondola rides down the dark canals of Venice, between whispered poetry and the thrill of the unknown. Each heartbeat became a ritual, each breath a fragment of memory carved into her body. These extreme emotions leave a neurological imprint. They engrave identity through sensation. So how can you use this without becoming toxic? Become synonymous with intensity. Avoid the dull rhythm of routine. Create sensory and emotional experiences she'll never forget. When she's with you, let her feel both comfort and chaos, safety and suspense in a single moment. Because it's in that paradox that memory is born. Harness the power of contrast. Evoke both euphoria and depth in the same night. Let her laughter echo beside silence. Let warmth meet mystery. Let her nervous system never quite rest. Because what never rests, never forgets. Never fall into complacency. Once your presence becomes predictable, the imprint begins to fade. The spell dissolves when repetition replaces rhythm. In the end, men who leave a lasting mark on a woman are not those who give her the most, but those who make her feel everything. They turn emotion into ritual, and ritual into memory. Freud understood. At this point, it's no longer seduction, but emotional reprogramming. A transfer of identity, not affection. When a woman crosses that threshold, she doesn't just love you for who you are, she loves the version of herself that awakens in your presence. You become the mirror of her vitality, the symbol of her most electric state. That is the true power. She no longer chases you. She chases the feeling of herself that you ignite. And once she associates your presence with that state, it can take years, sometimes decades, to break the bond. And that power, Freud concluded, belongs only to men who master three weapons: emotional intensity, which floods her system with adrenaline and dopamine; contrast, the delicate rhythm between warmth and mystery, closeness and distance; presence, the stillness that makes every silence magnetic. Because once you learn to control the rhythm, you no longer chase connection, you command it. Sensory memory is limited to what is intense, to those unforgettable moments that leave a mark beneath the skin. It remembers storms, not sunlight. It clings to the high voltage of emotion, not the comfort of peace. Once these impulses are activated, there is no turning back. She no longer desires you. She desires the state you awaken in her. You become her emotional drug, the mirror of her own aliveness. And here, Freud captured a truth that society still refuses to face. Eternal love stories aren't built on sweetness. They're built on intensity. Passion cannot survive routine. And the men who become unforgettable are not the ones who make promises, but the ones who provoke transformation. They change her chemistry, not her opinion. They leave fingerprints on her nervous system. So remember, don't try to be the best man for her. Be the only experience that no one else can replicate. Be the moment she can't recreate, the silence that still haunts her. Because once she's tasted it, everything else will feel dull, lifeless, incomplete. If this message has shaken you, if it has struck something deep within, ask yourself, do you want more content that disturbs, that breaks the mold, that cuts through illusions? Because this kind of raw truth does not survive on its own. Here, there are no filters, no comforting lies, only ideas that challenge your beliefs and pull you out of the coma of modern living. You weren't meant to drift through life half awake. You were built to see what others can't bear to. If you want this voice to remain free, if you want to stand among those who refuse convenient lies, click the link in the description. You can also support in simpler ways, by liking, sharing, or subscribing to this channel. Not as a gesture, but as a statement. A rebellion against the noise. It's simple, but powerful. Each click, each share, is a strike against deception, a step closer to a generation of lucid, strong, and untamed men. Men who see through comfort, men who reject manipulation, men who choose clarity over convenience. Convenience lies. Here, we open our eyes, and we rise together, not as followers, but as a movement of awakened minds. Because the world doesn't change when men get louder. It changes when men get clear, and that clarity is your revolution.